Maple Creek was the kind of place where neighbors still waved from their porches, where children rode bikes until dinner, and where the loudest sound was often the rustle of leaves on a breezy day. Nestled among rolling hills and sleepy woods, it was the kind of town people passed through, but rarely remembered. But for 10-year-old Emily Whitmore, it was home. Emily lived with her grandmother, Darlene, in a modest white house with faded blue shutters. After the accident that claimed her parents 2 years ago, she had become a quiet, thoughtful girl, more comfortable with books than with people, and more trusting of animals than adults. Her world was small, but in it there was one shining presence. Max, a retired police dog with a grizzled snout, a cloudy left eye, and the loyalty of a soldier. Max hadn't always belonged to them. He had served for 6 years in the city's K-9 unit with Officer Rick Griggs. When a leg injury forced his retirement, Officer Griggs couldn't bear the thought of giving Max up to a stranger. He thought of Emily, who had once visited the station with her class and had instantly connected with the dog. Griggs called Darlene and asked if they'd like to give Max a home. From the moment Max stepped into their house, he became Emily's shadow. Every afternoon, after finishing her homework and helping Darlene with small chores, Emily would clip on Max's leash and head for the park at the edge of town. It was their routine. Max walked a half step ahead, scanning their path, while Emily carried a small satchel of books and crackers. They always sat beneath the same giant oak tree. Emily would open her notebook and start sketching sometimes birds, sometimes dogs, and sometimes just shadows. Max would lie beside her, one eye closed, the other watchful. Locals often smiled as they passed. That girl and her dog, they'd say, inseparable. To some, it was a cute picture. To others, especially those who knew the story, it was a bond deeper than blood. Then one Tuesday afternoon, something felt different. Emily noticed it first. As she and Max entered the park's gate, a motorcycle sat parked just off the main path. It wasn't the usual kind of bike the old guys in town rode on weekends. This one was blacked out, dirty, and aggressive looking. The engine was off, but heat still rose from the pipes. Nearby, a man leaned against a tree, arms folded. He wore a leather jacket, dark sunglasses, and had a long, jagged scar that ran from his jaw to his neck. He wasn't looking at anyone except her. Emily felt Max tense immediately. His ears stood tall. His growl was soft but steady. She kept walking, her heart thudding louder than it should have. She didn't look back, but the man had noticed her. She was sure of it. When they returned home, she barely spoke. Darlene noticed her silence, but waited for dinner to ask, "Did something happen at the park today?" She asked gently, stirring stew on the stove. Emily hesitated, then nodded. There was a man standing by the trees. He was just staring. Did he say anything? No, but Max didn't like him. He growled the whole time. Darlene narrowed her eyes. Did you see his face? He wore glasses, but he had a scar, big one, right here. She motioned from jaw to neck. Darlene put down the spoon. That wasn't nothing. In Maple Creek, strangers were rare and scarred men riding black bikes rarer still. Well, she said carefully, next time, you don't go to the park alone. Not until we figure out who this man is. Max stood in the corner of the room, watching them, ears still slightly perked. His tail did not wag. And that night, for the first time since the accident, Emily double-checked that every door and window was locked. The next morning in Maple Creek felt like any other sunlight. Crept lazily through drawn curtains, birds chirped on fences, and the smell of fresh bread wafted from the bakery on Main Street. But for Emily and Darlene, a new tension quietly brewed beneath the familiar routine. Emily chose to stay home from the park that day. She claimed she wanted to finish her drawing of Max, But Darlene knew better. Something had shifted in her granddaughter. The quiet girl had grown quieter. Max followed her everywhere. He didn't just walk beside her. He paced, eyes sharp and ears twitching at every sound from outside. Darlene, usually one to downplay fear with a comforting phrase or distraction, found herself checking the blinds more often. Something about that man with the scar hadn't settled right in her gut. Later that afternoon, Darlene visited the town library to return a few books. Inside, she ran into Mrs. Blevins, the elderly librarian with a memory sharper than most computers. "You know," Mrs. Blevins said in a hushed tone, "I saw that man yesterday, the biker. He came in here." Darlene's breath caught. "What did he want?" "Said he was passing through town. Asked me if I knew a little girl with long brown hair who walked a German shepherd." Her eyes narrowed. "Said she reminded him of his niece. But I swear, the way he asked ... it wasn't right." That was enough for Darlene. When she got home, she made 2 calls. The first was to Officer Griggs. "I know it's not a crime to walk around town," she said, "but this man is asking about my granddaughter. She's scared. The dog's on edge. Something isn't right." Griggs listened closely. "I've seen the guy, too. Been parked behind the diner. Didn't like the look of him. I'll swing by and keep an eye out. You tell Emily not to go anywhere. Alone." The second call was to the school. Emily would be dropped off and picked up from now on. That evening, Emily sat curled up on the couch, her sketchpad untouched in her lap. "Max won't sleep," she murmured. "He just sits by the door." "Maybe he knows something we don't," Darlene replied. "Or maybe he just wants to keep you safe." Emily nodded, but said nothing more. The next day brought confirmation that the man wasn't just passing through. The biker whose license plate had been spotted by several townspeople was seen again, parked near the grocery store, lingering by the playground, and once, disturbingly, behind the elementary school. Max was alert every second. He growled at shadows, barked at anything that moved past the house, and refused to eat unless Emily was nearby. His instincts, sharpened by years of police work, were screaming. Emily clung to Max more than ever. "He's like a shield," she told her grandmother one night. "I feel okay when he's here." Darlene didn't say it out loud, but she felt the same. She placed an extra lock on the back door and made sure every curtain was drawn by dusk. Officer Griggs paid them a visit the following afternoon. He stood tall in the living room, his badge catching the sunlight. "We ran his plate," he told Darlene. "It's registered to a man named Troy Madsen. He's not wanted for anything ... yet, but I looked him up. Been through a few towns like ours in the past year. Always alone, always leaving behind stories." He looked at Emily and then at Max, who sat poised like a statue beside her. "You let Max keep doing what he's doing," Griggs said, kneeling to the dog's level. "You're lucky to have him." Max stared back, unwavering. That night, the air in Maple Creek felt heavier than usual. The wind rustled the trees outside. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of town, a black motorcycle engine purred to life in the dark. Friday arrived with a strange stillness. The town was quieter than usual, as if the streets themselves sensed something was off. Darlene kept Emily home from school, making up an excuse about a stomachache. She didn't trust sending her out. Not after hearing from another neighbor that the biker had been seen near the school grounds again, this time pretending to fix something on his bike while watching the children play. Emily didn't complain. She spent most of the morning with Max, brushing his coat and reading to him by the back porch. Max didn't rest. He paced, eyes flicking toward the tree line behind the house every few minutes. Something was coming. He felt it. By evening, Darlene had to leave for a quick errand, just 10 minutes to pick up Emily's medicine refill at the pharmacy. "Lock the doors," Don't open for anyone but me, she warned. You and Max stay inside, okay? Emily nodded. She wasn't scared anymore. She was alert. Max sat by the door like a sentry. But just minutes after Darlene's car disappeared around the corner, Max stood up sharply. His ears twitched. Then he barked once, sharp and low. He sprinted to the back door, nose pressed to the glass. Emily followed and gasped. The gate to their yard was open. Max? She whispered. The dog growled deep in his throat, low and primal. Without thinking, Emily opened the back door and stepped outside, Max immediately pushing past her, sniffing the ground, tracking something. A trail. She should have stayed inside. The wind rustled the leaves. Crickets stopped chirping. Suddenly, from the shadows of the tall trees, a voice echoed, Emily. She froze. Troy Mattson stepped out from behind the tree line. He wasn't smiling. His eyes were locked on her, cold and menacing. In his gloved hand, he held something, what looked like a rag. A dark bottle poked out from his jacket pocket. I just want to talk, he said, stepping closer. Don't be scared. Emily stumbled backward, heart pounding. Max stood between them now, snarling louder, teeth bared. Tell your dog to back off, Troy hissed. I'm not gonna hurt you. But before he could finish, Max lunged. The dog's leap was explosive, years of training roaring to life in an instant. His jaws clamped down on Troy's arm, dragging him backward with violent force. The rag dropped. The bottle clattered to the ground and rolled toward Emily's feet. It was labeled chloroform. Troy screamed, trying to shake Max off, punching wildly at the dog's side. But Max was unrelenting, his growls echoing through the woods. Like thunder, Emily ran, shouting at the top of her lungs. Help! Somebody help! He's here, please! Porch lights flicked on across the street. A neighbor heard her scream and ran out, phone in hand, dialing 911. Another neighbor, Mr. Kessler, grabbed a baseball bat and sprinted into the yard. By the time police sirens lit up the street, Max had forced Troy to the ground. He stood on the man's chest, growling low, daring him to move. Officer Griggs was the first to arrive, pulling Emily into his arms, while two deputies restrained Troy. They found the switchblade, the soaked cloth, and a small vial in his pocket sedatives. The story was no longer just a strange man in town. It was a full-blown abduction attempt. Emily sobbed into Griggs's chest as Max trotted over, panting, blood on his muzzle, but tail wagging gently. As he nuzzled her, "You're okay," Griggs whispered. "He won't hurt you. Not now. Not ever." Max sat at Emily's feet and didn't move for the rest of the night. Not even when the cameras came. Not even when the officers packed Troy into the back of a cruiser. He had done his job. Town would never forget it. Troy Mattson sat cuffed and silent in the back of the patrol car as it sped toward the Maple County Sheriff's Department. Despite his injuries, deep puncture wounds along his forearm and a blackened eye, he didn't speak a word. No apologies. No explanations. Just cold silence. But the evidence spoke for him. The officers had collected everything from the scene. The chloroform-soaked rag, the sedatives, the switchblade, and the vial labeled DZ, a tranquilizer banned for civilian use. It was clear this man hadn't approached Emily by chance. This had been a plan. A calculated, deliberate attempt to abduct a child. And had it not been for Max, he might have succeeded. Back at the Whitmore home, paramedics examined Emily. She was shaken, but physically unharmed. Darlene held her tight, her face pale, hands trembling. Max had a shallow gash on his shoulder, but stood proud and alert, never more than 2 feet from Emily's side. Officer. Griggs returned later that night, his expression grave but composed. We ran his name through the system again, he said. Turns out Troy Matson's not just a drifter. He's been using aliases for years. He opened a folder and spread several documents across the kitchen table. Mugshots, police reports, newspaper clippings. He's a suspect in multiple child abduction cases, from Oklahoma to Michigan, Griggs explained. Always the same pattern: quiet towns, young girls, no witnesses. He vanished before anyone could ever prove it was him. Emily stared at the photos. One of the articles showed a missing girl with freckles and brown eyes, no older than 10. Emily felt a cold knot twist in her stomach. Why wasn't he in jail? Darlene demanded. He was careful, Griggs replied. Slippery, until now. Emily looked at Max, who sat by her feet, watching Griggs with quiet intensity. She reached down and ran her fingers through his fur. He knew, she said softly. Max knew before I did. Griggs nodded. That's why they train them. Max didn't just protect you, he prevented something terrible. By morning, the news had spread. Attempted child abduction, thwarted by former K9 in Maple Creek. Hero dog takes down fugitive. Reporters appeared on Main Street by noon. Cameras rolled as townspeople spoke of Max like he was part legend, part guardian angel. The local sheriff's office released a public statement praising Max's actions and confirming that Troy Matson would face multiple federal charges. He wasn't going anywhere this time. Not in the following days. Maple Creek transformed. Neighbors who'd barely spoken began checking in on one another. Parents walked their children to school again. Porch lights that had gone out years ago suddenly glowed all night. Fear had shaken the town, but Max's actions gave it something stronger: unity. The school sent home letters assuring increased security. The park posted new signage and installed lights along the trail. And the mayor announced an upcoming Heroes parade to honor Max. Through it all, Emily stayed close to home, trying to understand everything that had happened. She didn't sleep much, and when she did, she often woke crying. But Max was always there, resting at the foot of her bed, eyes open in the dark, silently guarding her. One evening, as they sat by the back window watching the sunset, Darlene turned to Emily and asked gently, "Do you want to talk about it?" Emily shook her head at first, but after a pause, she whispered, "I wasn't just scared of him. I was scared because I knew. No one else saw him like Max did." Darlene put her arm around her. "That's why Max is here, and why he always will be." Outside, the trees swayed in the wind. The trail behind the house looked ordinary again. But Emily knew better. It would never feel the same. The next Saturday, the whole town gathered on Main Street. What was meant to be a quiet weekend had transformed into a full celebration. Banners hung from lampposts with the words, "Thank you, Max, our hometown hero." Local shops offered free lemonade and cookies. Children wore little badge stickers that read, "Team Max." For Emily, it was surreal. She stood beside Darlene near the front of the crowd, wearing a blue dress she hadn't touched in months. Her hand stayed planted on Max's back as he stood proudly, a red bandana tied around his neck. The crowd clapped and whistled when Officer Griggs walked up to the makeshift stage with a microphone in hand. "We gather here not just to celebrate a dog," Griggs began, his voice echoing down the street, "but a protector, a friend, and a hero who saw what we couldn't and acted when it mattered most." The applause grew louder as Griggs continued. Max didn't hesitate. He knew Emily was in danger when no one else did. He saved her life and possibly the lives of others. That kind of courage deserves more than words. He turned to Emily and knelt down, placing a small box in her hands. Inside was a medallion etched with Max's name and the Maple Creek police emblem. It hung on a black and gold ribbon. Emily opened it slowly, her eyes welling with tears. She knelt beside Max and gently clipped it around his neck. Max didn't move, but his tail thumped once against the ground. The mayor approached next, giving Max a bone almost as long as Emily's arm. Reporters snapped photos. Townsfolk smiled, through tears. For a moment, the scars of fear that had gripped the community were replaced by something stronger - gratitude out of the ceremony. People lined up just to pet Max or talk to Emily. Some brought treats. Others brought drawings. One woman, holding a small child in her arms, said softly, "Your dog saved my family too. Because now, I talk to my kids about trust, about safety, and about heroes." Emily didn't know what to say. She just nodded and hugged Max tighter. Darlene, too, was overwhelmed. She had lived in Maple Creek her whole life and had never seen the town so unified. The incident had cast a shadow, yes, but it also sparked something powerful. Protection, awareness, hope. That evening, when the crowd thinned and the reporters packed up, Emily and Max returned to the old oak tree in the park. It had been cleared of yellow tape and now had a small wooden sign placed beside it, in honor of Max, protector of Maple Creek. Emily sat down and leaned against the trunk. Max curled up beside her with a heavy sigh. The sun dipped low behind, the trees casting golden light over the quiet grass. For a few minutes, there was only silence. "I don't think I'll ever feel the same about this place," she whispered, fingers stroking Max's ear. "But that's okay, because now, it's not just mine. It's yours, too." Max lifted his head and looked at her, as if he understood every word. Back home, Darlene made Emily's favorite dinner, chicken soup and warm cornbread. She turned off the TV, lit a candle in the kitchen, and played soft music from an old radio. Emily ate quietly while Max napped under the table, finally at ease. That night, Emily slept without waking. No nightmares, no shadows at the window, just the soft breathing of Max nearby and the feeling, for the first time in weeks, that she was safe. The worst had passed, but the story was far from over. Word of Max's bravery spread far beyond the sleepy streets of Maple Creek. Within days, the local news story was picked up by regional reporters and then national media outlets. Suddenly, the quiet town found itself thrust into the spotlight. Emily wasn't sure how to feel about the cameras and microphones that followed her to school and even to the park where she once found peace. Reporters wanted to know everything. The moment Max jumped, how Emily felt, what it was like to live through something so terrifying. But for Emily, the experience was still raw, tangled with fear and confusion. One afternoon, as she sat on the bench beneath the old oak tree, a news crew approached. The woman behind the camera smiled kindly. "Would you like to tell everyone how Max saved your life?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Max is not just my dog. He's my protector. I don't think I could have been brave without him." That short interview aired on national television that evening. The story, titled "Hero Dog Saves Girl from Abduction Attempt," was featured on major news channels, shared millions of times on social media, and inspired thousands to talk about the bond between humans and animals. With the sudden fame came offers, book deals, interviews, and even invitations to speak at events about safety and the power of service animals. Max, now a local celebrity, received fan mail and donations from people who wanted to support retired police dogs. Emily and Darlene received a letter from a well-known Animal Rescue Foundation offering a scholarship for Emily to attend summer camps focused on animal training and therapy. They also received gifts of dog food, toys, and heartfelt letters praising Max's courage. But amidst the excitement, Emily remained grounded. She understood that while Max's actions saved her, the trauma she experienced couldn't be erased by applause or awards. At school, her classmates treated her differently. Some admired her bravery, others whispered behind her back, unsure how to act around someone who had been through something so serious. But Emily found solace in a new club, started by the school counselor, support group for children who had faced fear or loss. There, she met others who understood that healing was a process, not a single moment. They talked about nightmares, about feeling safe again, about trust. At home, Emily's bond with Max deepened. She started to help with his care, brushing him every day and learning about his training. She even asked Officer Griggs to teach her some basic commands. One afternoon, Griggs brought Max's old police badge and pinned it onto Emily's jacket. "You and Max make a team," he said. "Always have, always will." Emily smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. She felt ready to move forward, even if the past still shadowed her. But the story of Max and Emily didn't end with the headlines. It sparked a movement in Maple Creek. Local animal shelters began raising awareness about retired service dogs, and the town council passed a resolution to fund a program providing support animals to children facing trauma. Emily's quiet courage and Max's fierce loyalty inspired a community to heal together. And while Emily's world had changed forever, she knew one thing with certainty: she was never alone. As the weeks turned into months, life in Maple Creek began to settle into a new rhythm, one colored by healing, hope, and quiet strength. For Emily, the days were no longer defined by fear, but by small steps toward reclaiming the childhood she had almost lost. The support group at school became a sanctuary. Emily found friends who understood the heavy feelings she couldn't always explain. They shared stories of pain and resilience, and slowly, laughter began to fill the room where silence once reigned. Emily started speaking up, telling others about Max and the courage it took not just to fight danger, but to face what came after. At home, Max remained her steadfast companion. Though his muzzle was grayer and his movements slower, his spirit was unyielding. Every morning, Emily greeted him with a gentle smile, brushing his fur and offering a treat. Max, in turn, never strayed far from her side, sensing when she needed comfort or just a silent presence. Darlene watched her granddaughter with a mixture of pride and relief. The girl who once hid behind closed curtains was now volunteering at the local animal shelter, inspired by Max's bravery and wanting to give other animals a chance at love and safety. One afternoon, while organizing a fundraiser for retired service dogs, Emily met Lisa, a woman who had trained therapy animals for over a decade. Lisa was captivated by Max's story and asked if Emily wanted to learn more about how animals could help people heal. "Would you like to be a part of that?" Lisa asked, handing Emily a flyer for a summer camp dedicated to animal-assisted therapy. Emily's eyes sparkled. "Yes," she said, her voice steady and sure. That summer, Emily spent weeks learning about how dogs like Max could be trained to comfort children in hospitals, support veterans, and even assist those with disabilities. She met kids who, like her, had faced dark times but found light in their furry friends. Max came along to camp every day, his presence calming to everyone he met. Even with his old wounds and slower pace, he showed a joy that inspired others to keep going. Back home, the community of Maple Creek continued to grow stronger. The town council dedicated a part of the park to service animals, erecting a small pavilion where families could learn about safety and care for their pets. Emily helped lead workshops for children, teaching them how to respect and understand dogs. Through it all, Emily's own healing blossomed. The nightmares lessened, replaced by dreams of running freely with Max through fields of wildflowers. The fear that once gripped her heart softened into a cautious hope. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink, Emily sat on the porch with Darlene and Max curled beside her. "I'm proud of you," Darlene said softly. "You've grown stronger than I ever imagined." Emily smiled, resting her head against her grandmother's shoulder. "I had help," she whispered. Max lifted his head, his eyes meeting Emily's, filled with a silent promise. No matter what came next, he would be there. Because sometimes courage wasn't just about fighting danger, it was about finding the strength to heal. 2 years had passed since that terrifying night behind the trees. Emily had grown taller, her voice more confident, her eyes brighter. But one thing had remained the same: her bond with Max. Though the German Shepherd was slower now, with a limp more pronounced and naps longer, he was still her guardian, her shadow, her best friend. And in Maple Creek, he was a legend. The town never forgot what Max did. Children learned his story at school. Families walked past the oak tree at the park and read the plaque beneath the sign. In honor of Max, protector of Maple Creek. That spring, the mayor announced a new annual event, Max Day, a celebration of courage, kindness, and the bond between people and animals. Local shelters offered free adoptions. Retired service dogs were paraded through town, and Emily was asked to speak, wearing a blue dress and Max's old police badge pinned to her chest. She stood on the podium beneath sunny skies, her voice echoing through the crowd. "I was 10 years old when Max saved my life. He didn't do it for a medal or a story in the paper. He did it because he loved me. And that kind of love, it doesn't go away. It doesn't fade. It changes you. It teaches you how to be brave, even when you're scared. It reminds you that you're never alone." The crowd clapped, many wiping away tears. Max, laying quietly beside her, lifted his head and gave a tired but proud bark. After the ceremony, Emily sat with Max in the grass behind the stage. She fed him bits of grilled chicken and rubbed behind his ears. He didn't run much anymore. His steps were short, his breath heavier, but his heart? It was still the same. That summer, one morning dawned colder than usual. Emily woke before sunrise and walked downstairs to find Max curled on his favorite blanket near the fireplace. He didn't lift his head this time. She dropped to her knees and whispered his name, gently stroking his fur. His body was still warm, his expression peaceful. Max had passed in his sleep. The grief hit like a wave, deep, crashing, relentless. Emily cried for days. The house felt emptier, the corners quieter, the silence heavier. But the town rallied around her once again. Cards flooded their mailbox. Children left hand-drawn pictures of Max on the porch. A candlelight vigil was held at the park where Max once protected her. Officer Griggs placed Max's collar in a memory box, alongside his medal and badge. "We don't just mourn heroes," he told the gathered crowd. "We carry them with us." Emily did exactly that. She turned her grief into purpose. She began working with animal therapy programs full-time, visiting hospitals and schools with other trained dogs. She told Max's story again and again, how a broken dog helped heal a broken girl. How love, when fierce and loyal, could stand between someone and the worst moment of their life. On Max Day the following year, Emily unveiled something new, a foundation in Max's name dedicated to pairing retired service dogs with children in need of comfort and protection. It was called Max's Watch. "This is what Max would have wanted," she said, her voice strong, tears in her eyes. "To keep helping, to keep guarding, even if he's not here to do it himself." Years later, long after she left Maple Creek for college, Emily would return to that same oak tree every year. She would sit beneath its branches, read a book aloud, and place a flower beside Max's plaque, because some heroes never leave you. They live on in memory, in courage, and in the lives they've saved. And for Emily Whitmore, Max wasn't just a dog. He was family. He was a legend. He was the reason she became a light for others. All because one day, A dog stood between a girl and the darkness, and refused to let it take her.